highs. Now, when it comes to XDC, we know that XDC has a ton of fundamentals tied to it, and the utility that XDC also has is very, very valuable. Today, we have a $1.4 billion market cap, fully diluted value of $3 billion. The upside potential here could easily be 10 to 20x from where we're currently trading at. And I know that that sounds crazy to think of, but it's 100% possible, especially when we start to see alt season hit big. And I do suspect that we are going to see a very big push on altcoins very soon. And during this time, I'm focused on projects like XDC. Now, if we're thinking about XDC on the chart currently, this is what we have in front of us. Now, I am recording this a little bit ahead of time, but regardless of that, I'm not expecting this chart to change drastically within that time frame. But just taking a quick look at the overall price chart here, we still need to clear some levels going to the upside, but we are now just hovering around support. We're building out a floor on this blue zone, which is also those previous highs going back to May. I'm watching to see if we're going to maintain the 7.5 cent zone. We should not lose this. And I'm watching for a big break. As you guys can see me, down here, I circled this. I'm watching for a big break above that yellow moving average on RSI. That's going to be the signal that we are about to break out, just like going back in June, where we started to cross that moving average and we started to break, and that is what allowed us to retest that 10-cent zone from about roughly almost 6 cents on the chart. But this time around, I do suspect that we could potentially break over this resistance at around almost 10.5 cents, clearing the red zone and getting back to the highs from January. Now, that's not where I think we stop. I still think that we go and retest the all-time high of around 19.5 cents. And if we're thinking about that, percentage-wise from where we're currently trading at, this is a 147% push to the upside. So this would be a very strong gain, and this will most likely put us into a spot where we go into price discovery, and who knows where XDC can go, right? We could easily 10x from where we're currently trading at, or possibly even 20x. And I do think that, yes, a 20x can happen. I still think that XDC could become close to a $100 billion project. We've seen it happen before, especially with a lot of meme coins, so it wouldn't surprise me at all. It wouldn't shock me at all to see XDC trading within that like $60 to $100 billion market cap level. Now, of course, is that going to happen? Well, in a perfect world, it does, but we know that we are not living in a perfect world. So we have to make sure that we're being a little bit more conservative here. So, a 10x to a $30 billion market cap, fully diluted value would be, plenty for me in my opinion. So let's see what happens here. But XDC is looking very, very bullish. By the way, I don't mean to interrupt the video, but if you guys do want to buy, sell crypto, even buy and sell gold and silver, or even if you just want to tap into an IRA platform based around crypto, or maybe you just want to have your crypto held in a premium institutional grade custody platform, iTrust Capital is your best friend. If you guys do want to go check this out, there's a lot of things that iTrust Capital has to offer, including, of course, their IRA platform, as well as their premium custody account. And you can sign up right now utilizing my link down in the description below, as well as in the comments below. And if you do fund your account with $1,000, you do get a $100 funding bonus as well, almost immediately. So if you guys do want to go check this out, there's going to be a link down in the description below, as well as in the comments below. And with that being said, let's dive on in back to the video. So when we think about XDC, in terms of price action, $30 billion is not a small feat. It's not a small amount of money. And this is where we start to look at the facts. What's going to get us to that $30 billion mark? Is it just going to be hype and buying demand? Well, sure, that goes a long way. However, there's also a lot that has been happening around XDC. And just going off of this Generation Infinity post here, I think this kind of shares a little bit of a insight on just what happened over the summer for XDC. So these are just a few of the most exciting pieces of the puzzle. For an example, we have native USDC with Circle. That's, hitting XDC in a big way. Listings, Binance, Kraken, huge exchanges. I do suspect that we will see Binance added to that list, as well as Coinbase. I think that a Binance US listing basically tells us, hey, guess what? Binance will also list this project here in a bit. We just kind of got to be a little bit more patient with that. And then, of course, 21 Shares ETP in Europe. Institutional grade access to XDC is starting to build around some of these ETPs, so we love to see that. Then also $1 billion in RWA. This is planned with Vert Capital. which we have yet to see hit XDC. I've been watching and tracking this through rwa.xyz. We're still waiting on that. And then also real estate with Archix Exchange, kind of the same story with Vert Capital, where we're watching this, tracking it in real time, just waiting for that value to hit the chain. And then of course events. Brazil, Vietnam, Japan, Boston. Yeah, there's been a ton of events around XDC in the ecosystem, which of course we're very excited about. And, you know, just kind of looking over some of these updates, we could see them all here. I mean, it's been a very, very good time for XDC. I feel like these announcements are starting to become more consistent. We're not, you know, really kind of shocked by these announcements anymore because it's just becoming very common, which is exactly why we should be focused on XDC, because there's been so much more outside of those announcements, even like, for an example, EO, which is now live on XDC. This is, you know, really a big push because this is with feeds, which allows for a lot more around tokenized RWAs with DeFi, converging TradFi with tokenization, and also those tokenized assets for yield opportunities and things like that. So when we think about all of these big players and all of these big milestones that XDC has really kind of, you know, hit over the last couple months, it shows us that XDC is not just that small time project anymore. They're starting to make a ton of noise, and they're starting to really carve out a path to that, you know, top 50 spot, eventually a top 25 spot, and then of course a top 10 spot. Now, not every project will be a top 10 project, but, you know, XDC definitely has top 20, top 15 potential. I do think that it could hit the top 10 potentially, but we'll have to watch, wait, and see what happens. But beyond that, also over here talking about events, we did get a big update from XDC Innovation Lab. We have XDC Network is going global in Q4 of this year, and we're closing the year with impact. With only a few months left in 2025, we're making this final stretch unforgettable. From global finance to crypto to blockchain adoption, the XDC Network is stepping onto some of the world's most influential stages. CBOS 2025 in Germany, September 29th through October 2nd. That's going to be a very large event to focus on if you haven't already started to really kind of track the dates. And then also Token 2049, a very large event as well in Singapore, October 1st through the 2nd. And then last but not least, we have India Blockchain Week, which is December 2nd through the 3rd. These are major events, and just like Innovation Lab is saying here, these events aren't just conferences, they're opportunities to connect, collaborate, and showcase how XDC is shaping the future of finance and technology. And this is only the beginning. As we wrap up 2025, expect to see XDC Network making its mark across even more global ecosystems in the months ahead. So this tells us that, number one, there's going to be a lot more, you know, ecosystem expansion. We're probably going to see a few big updates coming from XDC. Typically, these conferences lead to major connections and networking, which also lead to major partnership announcements, ecosystem expansion announcements, like, for an example, the ones that we saw with EO. There's also a lot of XDC integrations that have happened over the last couple months. I expect to see a lot more of that. And then, you know, who knows? Exchange listings could also happen through some of these conferences because, yes, centralized exchanges do participate at some of these events. They're, you know, major sponsors as well. So I'm definitely locked in on some of these big events, especially CBOS. I think that that's going to be a very exciting one to really kind of, you know, pay attention to. But beyond that, outside of, you know, major events and kind of talking about, you know, just the exposure that XDC has, Travis John, who is the head of institutional DeFi in the US for XDC Network, put out a post earlier yesterday, or no, this is from the 10th. I thought this was earlier yesterday. Last night's NYSE Wired event at the New York Stock Exchange was an incredible meeting of the who's who bringing Wall Street on chain. Love seeing the prominent display of XDC Network and XDC Foundation on the NYSE floor. And yeah, if we actually look at this, this is the New York Stock Exchange. We could see a few images. There's XDC on center stage. We love to see that. And then also over here, you have XDC next to some pretty big names from the space and around the space. And then, yeah, we have a few images of just like the New York Stock Exchange itself. But yeah, this is very exciting stuff. It seems as though XDC is making a lot of noise. Marketing is kicking up. We're starting to see, you know, a little bit more recognition for XDC as well. So, you know, very exciting stuff. Beyond that, we also have another big update from the XDC Foundation team, just highlighting the opportunity here for XDC. Global trade finance equals $9 trillion. SMEs represent 80 to 90% of trade, yet only 40% of their finance needs are met. Zinfin USA is breaking down how XDC Network addresses this gap right now at blockchain. And this is, by the way, another major event. This is Boston Blockchain Week. But if we're looking at this, we do have the global trade finance image. $9 trillion global trade finance industry, 80 to 90% of SME share of global trade, 40% of SME finance needs met, and then also the $5 trillion trade finance gap, which, by the way, we've been really kind of following that $5 trillion trade finance gap for quite some time. XDC, with the announcement from the ITFA, which is the International Trade of Forfeiting Association, they put out a full-on post regarding how XDC is the main player to bridge that $5 trillion gap. At that time, I think it was like 1.9 trillion, possibly even 2.5 trillion. But yeah, XDC is one of the biggest players in this space that is that bridge for that trade finance gap to really kind of close it. So very exciting stuff. And again, another great event that XDC is making a ton of noise at. And here we also have another quote. Trade finance is the biggest opportunity in blockchain. Now, a lot of people will, continue to, argue about this and say, no, it's payments. Oh, no, it's this, it's that. Trade finance, the reason why trade finance is the biggest opportunity for blockchain and even around this digital asset technology is the fact that trade finance is an industry that's been heavily dominated by paper processes even today, still. So it's an industry that is ripe for disruption. It's an industry that has yet to move into the digital age. And at a time where blockchain is being adopted at the speed that it is and how big blockchain is becoming, it kind of feels like this is like the last industry to get touched by digital technology at a time where, crypto is that new technology, on the block. So trade finance, guess what they're going to do? They're going to innovate with the newest technology. So blockchain is that newest technology. And that's what's happening right now with XDC. It's what's been happening with XDC over the last, I would say, like 5 years or so now. And that's why we are so locked in on what XDC is doing in this industry at a time where, again, the market cap for XDC, fully diluted value, $3 billion. The opportunity here is a $5 trillion gap that needs to be met. And global trade finance is worth $9 trillion. So XDC, if it is going to be successful in this industry, which it seems as though that's the case, XDC could become extremely valuable over time. And by the way, big shout out to Tokenizer. This is a post that I think almost every XDC investor should be looking into. We have XDC is the closest thing that we have to a live blockchain running real world global trade, approved by the ITFA and Abu Dhabi GM. Live RWAs by Securitize on Trade Tech, executed the first UK and ITFA's EDTA and DNI trade, logging trades across the UAE and Japan, tokenized gold custody by Dubai DMCC, ISO 20022 compatible with bridges to R3 Corda, used for digital trade by JP Morgan and Lloyd's, tokenized money market funds on-chain via Archix. XDC is where tokenized bills of lading, credit insurance, and asset-backed invoices are being settled. Not hypothetically, but now. Most DLTs are still testing trials. XDC is executing real-world use cases in real time. XDC may not be the home for crypto traders, but it's certainly becoming the home for digital global trade finance. And yeah, I don't think that people realize all of the connections that XDC does have. Like, for an example, when we go back in time, right? We go back in time to all of the original updates that we were getting from XDC. At that time, the XDC network was still very early on. Nobody really knew that XDC was going to become this big player. And then all of a sudden, over the last couple years, XDC got spotlighted by the ICC, the WTO, and if you guys don't know, this is the International Chamber of Commerce, and also the World Trade Organization. These two players alone are major names around trade finance. They spotlighted trade finance's opportunity with XDC. They said XDC is becoming a dominant force around trade finance, and I feel like the recognition has only been growing more and more over time, especially with a lot of these recent announcements from the XDC team. And again, early on, yeah, XDC was talking about going after trade finance, and everyone kind of wrote it off. They were like, oh, I don't know. It's kind of a boring industry. Nobody really cares about it. Cross-border payments at that time were like the biggest thing. So, again, it's kind of still very overlooked. It's still a huge industry, and XDC is going after it. But the best part about it is that XDC is a part of the ITFA, right? They also have the DNI initiative, right? Like that's a huge one. And then also, the ICC and the World Trade Organization, they both spotlighted XDC's technology, being very disruptive and efficient for trade finance. XDC is really, in my opinion, a huge piece of the global trade finance revolution with digital technology. Like this is the biggest player in this space around, trade finance that we have in front of us that we can invest into, that, we could study and learn about. Outside of that, there really isn't a dominant name in the space that we can put on the same pedestal as XDC around trade finance, which is why when I look at XDC today, I still think that this thing is so extremely undervalued, overlooked, and just underappreciated from a utility perspective. So, with that being said, I do think that XDC is going to be a huge gem, not just now, but also for the long-term future ahead. I think that with alt season basically being here, it's showing its early signs, XDC is a huge opportunity. Do not miss XDC. I'm telling you guys that right now. A lot of people wish that they can go back to 2020, right before that 2021 run. Don't be that same person thinking about XDC now and saying, oh, well, it doesn't look like it's going to be anything, so just forget about it. And then all of a sudden you come back and it's at 80 cents. So with that being said,